Hi everyone, my name is Alexandra Mitzel, and I'm here to talk to you about the presidential power and in the 21st century for our Gov635 class. So for our week one discussion board, Professor McCarthy posed several questions for us to consider with our two readings. He said in the preface to the 1990 edition of Presidential Power and the Modern Presidents, Neustadt notes presidential weakness was the underlying theme of presidential power. This remains my theme. Is Neustadt's view of presidential weakness still valid today, or, as Skowronek suggests, was it simply a good perspective for analyzing the mid-century presidency? Do the so-called administrative presidencies of the 21st century reflect a change in the importance of persuasive power, professional reputation, and public prestige? We're going to take a look at those in the following slides. So for our first slide, we're going to consider the first part of Professor McCarthy's question and consider Neustadt's perspectives as they apply today. So we're looking at, is Neustadt's view of presidential weakness still valid today? So in our Dickinson reading, he tells us that Neustadt defined presidential weakness as the sense of a great gap between what is expected of a man and assured capacity to carry through. So to answer the question and considering that definition of presidential weakness, overall, I would say yes, presidential power has not changed that much since Neustadt was writing this. So in that sense, there is still a presidential weakness. If you take, for example, the nation's interests in a presidential election year versus any other election year, you can see how people's perceptions and expectations of what the president will bring to the table and get done are intense and very heightened. But in reality, we know that the president alone, he can make promises, but alone he holds very little power to actually create and enact those changes that we are expecting him to do. For example, like legislating laws, he needs, to look to the legislative branch. Also, in making appointments like Supreme Court nominations or FCC, he's going to need approval again from Congress. He can't declare war without the legislative branch, that sort of thing. So in that sense, yes, presidential weakness is still a valid perspective today. Now we can look at the second part of Professor McCarthy's question. He asks, in considering presidential weakness, that Skowronek suggests it's simply a good perspective for analyzing the mid-century presidency, and we're supposed to flesh out if we agree with that or not. So Skowronek is suggesting that Neustadt's views and perspectives on presidential power are too narrow overall. He believes that the window of time Neustadt's study caused him to miss other aspects of a presidency that would demonstrate effectiveness. He looks at recent presidencies as a period distinguished by new tools of mass communications, by international interdependence, and by intensified international competition. He believes that the president has the ability to reshape the political landscape using tools of mass communication. He also believes the measure of a president's effectiveness must include how the president manages international dependence and competition. One example of this would be brokering trade agreements. And these methods that I just mentioned of evaluating presidential effectiveness are not mutually exclusive, although Neustadt's analysis excludes new and changing aspects of the modern day presidency like these. His theories on presidential weakness are still valid today. Finally, we can look at the administrative presidencies and the last part of our discussion questions for this week. We're asked, do the so-called administrative presidencies of the 21st century reflect a change in the importance of persuasive power, professional reputation, and public prestige? So the influence of persuasive power, professional reputation, and public prestige has changed. It has grown, and I'll flush that out here. So some critics of New STAT failed to consider the president's formal powers, and I have our quote here: presidents can make policy unilaterally by issuing executive orders, proclamations, memoranda, and national security directives that do not need congressional assent. So based on that, at a shallow glance, it appears that the president would have a lot of power. The presidential power would not look weak at a shallow glance there. However, even with administrative presidencies exercising these formal powers, there's still valid reasons to conclude that the presidential power is weak. For example, if you consider the Trump travel ban, that was put on several holds from the judicial branch before it was even passed. So just because a president may exercise these formal powers, it's not just kind of monarchy, authoritarian kind of government. There's still checks and balances that are going to be in play. And furthermore, the presidents need to consider the importance of persuasive power, professional reputation, and public prestige more nowadays in order to enact lasting change and more effective policies through legislation, which we know that requires the cooperation of the legislative branch if they want to extend those changes just beyond their administration years. So to answer the question, their importance has changed but still remains valid in respect to affecting the legislature. So that wraps up my discussion for week 1. I look forward to hearing from you guys in the comments and looking forward to our discussions in the continued weeks. Thank you.